All right, welcome to Optimal Game State. Today we're doing something a little bit different. I don't have slides and graphics for video prepared on a detailed subject. Instead, I just want to talk a little bit about something that I think will be helpful for some people, um, maybe not more experienced people, but how to actually buy stuff from Games Workshop is a little bit trickier than it really should be. Honestly, with any other business, you would just work out what you want to buy and then you would buy it. Not so with Games Workshop. So, we're going to talk a little bit about their business practices. We're going to talk a little bit about how to get what you want, um, and to kind of understand why maybe you're not able to get certain products. The first thing to look at or to consider is the nature of Games Workshop itself. It is actually a big business, but it's not run that way. Now, the reason behind this is Games Workshop over the last 10 years, give or take, has had a massive increase. But quite sensibly, they are very conservative in their outlook and their approach. They are low risk takers. An example of this is with the currencies. The sterling prices for everything, it is what it is. The euro conversion for that is not direct. So once you look at the euro price, it is more if you were than if you were converted to sterling, and even more if for the US, and even more for the Aussie dollar. So what's happening here is Games Workshop is protecting itself. It's being very risk adverse. If there's currency fluctuations, they've already set such a big adjustment in those conversions, that they're not going to be impacted. Unfortunately, it does impact us, but it just kind of goes to show that Games Workshop are very, very risk averse. They don't want to stir things up or make a mess. Now, in relation to what has happened with them recently, their demand has gone up massively, but the number of warehouses and number of factories, more importantly, have not. So they apparently have been trying to get their hands on more factories in Nottingham, but it looks like it's something they're struggling on. From what we can tell, all of the factories they have are working flat out. Um, they have had some upgrades in their warehousing that we've been told of, and post Brexit, they did have to move a chunk of stuff over to, I'm not sure whether it was France or Spain, but they have got a lot more warehousing set up over there. There was a big change in some of the software that we're using, and apparently it was a bit of a mess. And we have seen a lot of warehouse and distribution issues that they've had. Now, partially that does seem to be to do with the manufacturing in the first place, so actually getting enough products out. But we also know there are also problems with allocation, so we're not always seeing the local stores getting what they were promised. There have been several cases where they got half the amount of product that they thought they were going to be able to sell. So Games Workshop told the store, "We're giving you 20," but they only gave them 10 in the end. We're also seeing the pre-order window going up to 2 weeks, which again does seem to relate to distribution. But the core part of all of this is Games Workshop is very risk averse, and has suddenly become this big company. Now, one of the parts about that, and you've probably noticed that the prices are all very expensive. The reason for this, much and much, is that because they're unable to expand their manufacturing yet, it's not like, say, Disney or something where they can make more money by churning out more units of something. Instead, if Games Workshop wants to make more money, they up the prices, and they do up the prices. And in they are we are still buying them, and while we continue to buy them, there is going to be an appetite for them to push up the prices. It is what it is. I'm not going to labor too much on that point. But it does mean, one, that we can expect to be a regular yearly price increase, and that the markup is going to be very high. Now, as associated with that, there are no deals, there are no sales. They will never sell anything below the price that they sell it at. Such to such an extent that we know they have destroyed product rather than sell it for sale. So if something isn't selling and they've got it sitting in their warehouses, it will go into the bins, it will get destroyed. And from a business perspective, you can kind of understand this. Why start putting discounts on something, that just means you're going to have to discount more things and people will expect discounts. But as long as people are used to there never being discounts and there always being an increase, we pay and we keep paying. Now, you can get a 20% discount in your local store. What's happening here is the local stores are being allowed up to 20% out of their own pocket. So if a store chooses to, sell the product for less, then they get less money. It's not Games Workshop. Games Workshop are still getting the exact same amount from that store as they would otherwise. So honestly, I think there's a definite case to be made for stores to stop giving that 20% savings, largely because we're seeing a lot more limited stock and you'll often find everything sell out quite quickly. And if everything's selling out quite quickly, why shouldn't the store that is, trying to trying to keep things running, and a lot of the time these are places where you're going to play, where you'll meet people. It's a real kind of community aspect. um, so yeah, definitely support your local store. That is kind of tricky, as we'll see a little bit later as we kind of get into things. But if you find a store that isn't offering that 20% that everyone else seems to be, don't discount them straight away, because GW aren't giving money to the stores. That discount is taking money away, if that makes sense. Okay, GW is super important for stores. Um, to say that they have a monopoly would be grossly inaccurate. However, Magic the Gathering and Games Workshop products do make up a considerable bulk of your hobby store's day to day money. That, in particular, for the pre orders that you will make at your local store, that's it's a big chunk. So there's always something every week that GW release that's been super hyped up, and that is everyone's interested and everyone wants. And stores make a good chunk out of that. Enough of a chunk that they actually struggle on the off weeks. If Games Workshop doesn't have a good product, or if there's a delay and for whatever reason they have to skip it, or as we've seen a couple of cases where they all the products that GW are selling are purely web store only. Doesn't happen that often, but we have had a few cases of that. Typically, when they've missed a release for another product and they just had to kind of skip a week. But yeah, it is a big part of the regular income, and can cause problems. On top of that, you will occasionally see cases where, I think I mentioned this before, where a store will go to Games Workshop and say, "Look, we're looking for 20 of these." Games Workshop will say, "We can guarantee 10 to you." Store will go, "Okay, so pre-orders for 10 people," and then 5 will turn up. What's happening there is Games Workshop has undersold. Um, they have looked at what they're actually getting and decided to hold back some for themselves, or just didn't have enough to meet the needs of all of the local game stores that they're trying to supply. Again, it's a manufacturing and it's a supply issue. Unfortunately, it happens. Now, you will have a couple of game stores that will overpromise and underdeliver. That's on them. But I think we have seen many cases where it has been GW at fault, unfortunately. And yeah, there are web store exclusives, and we have seen suggestions for some recent ones where uh, uh, Games Workshop may have been holding stuff for their own store so they get a little bit more money out of it. Speculation, not going to dwell too much on that. The cycle, as it happens, is you're obviously going to get the previews and the LVO reveals and things like that. So you kind of have an idea of what's coming up. But then Sunday evening, you will get a notification if you've signed up to their emails. You get an email. There'll be an article on the Warhammer Community Store or website, and that will tell you what's coming up next week. So next Saturday. Next Saturday at 10 a.m. You're probably too late. So at 10 a.m. the embargoes are get lifted. So the content creators who are privileged to actually get content directly from Games Workshop will have to wait till 10 a.m. on Saturday morning before they're allowed to do anything, and that's UK time. Then the similar with the stores. The stores cannot put up their pre-orders until 10 a.m. Things aren't quite the same for the Warhammer store, unfortunately. They do say 10 a.m. is when the pre-orders go live. In reality, it's more like a quarter to. If I want to buy something from the Warhammer store, I start checking at about a quarter to, because I've often found that 10 to, 5 to, and sometimes a quarter to, the products go up early. And people are aware of this and they will buy them out. So quite recently, I was trying to get my hands on the Great Slaughter and the card pack. The card pack in particular is a tricky one to get because GW have a habit with certain products like cards and dice, sometimes books, um, of doing limited runs and just not going back. Typically, anything that enhances the game but isn't a core part of the game will only get one print run. Blood Bowl boards is a kind of another example. You don't need to have 100 Blood Bowl boards. So yeah, Games Workshop tend to just do one. So often with products like that, or card packs where they're not an essential part of the game, or even where they are, like with Underworlds, those packs tend not to get re-released again after that product is gone. So yeah, okay. So at a quarter to, start checking. One or two things will happen depending on what GW has decided is going to go down. Either you'll just see it suddenly appear, you'll be able to buy it, it'll be done, or they'll institute the queue. Now, the queuing system is for the really high demand. It's not really for you, it's not really for us as consumers. It is to protect the store, the Warhammer store's infrastructure, essentially. It prevents them from accidentally getting DDoSed by their consumers. But yeah, you'll get into the queue, you'll wait, and then at the end of the queue, you'll have a few minutes to explore and look what you get. Recommendation is, as I said, start checking a quarter to, but prior to that, have your credit card details in and be ready to purchase, because the number of times I've seen people get to the end of it and uh, start typing away, putting in their details, and get kicked out because the product is gone. It's unfortunate. Put in your credit card details ahead of time, have them saved so that you can instantly make the purchase. Very dangerous, I know, but yeah, it is what it is. For a long while, I was using PayPal. If you use PayPal and one of the products in your list goes out of stock, you will get an error. It will not tell you which product has gone out of stock. You will just get an error until you remove that product, and then you'll be able to progress. Very frustrating. So that is what happened with me with the card pack. The card pack went out of stock while I was still trying to work on it, and the book hadn't. But I couldn't work out what was going on. Once I did work out what was going on, the book went out. Sad. If you do it with a credit card, for whatever reason, the credit card will check if things are out of stock, and it will remove it. Unfortunately, I have heard of cases where people have made the purchase, didn't realize that it had been removed, and thought they had it, and then only when they went back to look at it had checked. So yeah, if recommendation is putting your credit card details. Bad general practice, I know, but we're trying to get product, and for keep an eye on that. There may be cases where you buy it and get told later by Games Workshop that the product is gone and you'll get a refund. Not a great situation. I have heard that happen on occasion, but it is unfortunately what it is. The reason you're putting in the credit card is to try to get processed as fast as possible. You might consider working out which products are more likely to go out faster than others. As I said, card packs, some, not necessarily dice. Dice tend to be low impact. Always the special edition books, of course. Um, yeah, so that's kind of a little bit of product research you're going to have to understand for yourself to work out what is going to go out and what isn't going to go out. Kill team boxes, for example, tend to go out, and largely that's because they're being underproduced, and there's a lot of people kind of looking for the 40k products, if not necessarily for kill team. Anyway, that's an aside. Um, All right. So what happens if you don't manage to get it on that store? Your other game stores are going to be putting up theirs at 10 a.m. In my case, I did actually, as I said, I put the details into it. I had it ready in Warhammer.com, but I did want to buy it from one of the other stores. And unfortunately, that other store got allocated so little that they sold out straight away. But if you are desperate to try get something, you've checked Warhammer, it's gone out, then you have the other stores as options. If some of them aren't putting them up at 10 a.m. And are putting them up later, they're great to kind of keep in mind. Some place that you can go to. Have a list of the stores that you can check, and that'll help you actually get your hands on things. There may be some local stores that you have. I have one who do not do online pre-ordering, but you can walk into them and say, hey, or call them up and say, hey, I'm looking to get this. Can you see if you can get it? Again, that's reliant on Games Workshop actually providing it to them. There's no guarantees, but if you've managed to clear out all of your pre-orders or your pre-order options from your online stores, and that is an extra option. If you don't manage to do that, they do get limited stock into the physical Warhammer stores themselves. Um, Typically, in cases I've seen where things have gone out, where it's been cleared out, they will often get one or two. Not always. Sometimes they don't get any. But it is something to check. So if you completely miss a pre-order, you are interested, walking into your local store at Saturday when the product actually was due to arrive. So that would have been 2 weeks after the pre-order currently. Now that used to be 1 week. It has changed to 2 weeks. That does seem to be a problem with the distribution that Games Workshop have, so that may change. You'll always see it based on the Saturday article. It'll tell you when product is going to arrive, or if the you look on the store, it will actually say there and tell you. If you're ordering from Games Workshop directly, they will send it on the day that they say they're going to release it. So there can be some delays there. If you're getting it from a local store, often what they'll do is they'll try and make sure to get it to you on that time, or maybe you can walk into your store and pick it up. I tend, if I'm ordering from Games Workshop, to order to my local Games Workshop store. And again, they only send on the day the release is happening, and then it takes a couple of days to actually get to their store because obviously they're not sending it by normal post; they're sending it as part of the normal shipment. So often for me, I'll pre-order. It'll be 2 weeks before it ships, and then it's another full week before I can actually get my hands on it, which is crazy when you think about it. But it is what it is. Okay, so you haven't managed to get it. You haven't managed to turn up your local store and find it. Don't worry. Like a lot of the time, the big pre-orders are what they call value boxes. So this is a case where, with Kill Team as an example, where you'll have the most recent one was the Striking Scorpions versus Space Marine Scouts. That went out really fast, relatively fast, and now we're seeing the box being split. So you can now get your hands on either the Striking Scorpions or the Space Marine Scouts. Value has kind of dropped slightly. You don't have the cards that you had in that pack. So you did get some Kill Team cards, and you did get a little bit of Kill Team scenery, and you probably would have got a Kill Team book along with it. And knowing GW, the price for the two individually will probably be the same as you would have got for the box. So there is some content you're going to be missing, and often it is paper. Um, yeah, often it's paper, so cards and books that you have often are something that kind of get dropped. Now, Games Workshop, I think, are beginning to understand that this can be a problem, so we are seeing these appear in White Dwarfs. So you're able to get those rules in there. There are, of course, other options. There are third-party people who will give you card creators or will provide rules. So that is out there. Um, I'll talk about it another time in ways that is actually Games Workshop dropping the ball and the community stepping in to help out. We just want to play games. We just want to have some fun. That's the kind of the key important part there. But yeah, what I'm talking about here is boxes often get split. You will spend a little bit more in getting the individual parts than you would the combined whole. But if you're only interested in those Striking Scorpions, you didn't care about the cards, you were adding to your other army, that box is probably going to be better. So sitting back and waiting might be a better approach. There are eBay and there are resellers. Do everything you can to avoid scalpers. So if you miss a product, think about other ways you can get it, or think about how you can live life without it, because paying 5 to 6 times the actual printed price, it's just not something you want to do. Like, Games Workshop products are always expensive and already expensive enough. There's no point making it even worse and even encouraging the kind of behavior. Now, I know, I understand that some people will do it anyway, and that's fine. If you've got money to blow, that's thing. I would definitely recommend against it. And part of that is because the hype cycle. There's always going to be something new. There's always going to be a new product that's going to be, get your interest. I have a stack of things that I need to work on, and that are all fantastic purchases that I'm very, very happy with. But that, um, at the time I was a lot more excited about than I am now. And I need to remember that when I'm looking at the next big purchase. A lot of the time I've turned around, I've looked at my backlog and I've gone, you know what, actually, I don't need to get that. I should pull out this box here. That doesn't always happen. I'm not the strong man that I could be. Okay, but yeah, but there's always something next. There's always something next in the hype cycle. So sometimes missing out on something isn't a big deal. It just means you save your money for next week. And there are also alternatives, like you can get some 3D printers and you can get other options like that, or you know other approaches. You can sit back and kind of think about how you would do things differently. All right, so to wrap up, Games Workshop has some weird business practices. Largely, it works on a cycle of hype and of trying to sell you the next big thing all the time. Unfortunately, this does have consequences for us trying to enjoy and trying to play a game. So, I mean, you kind of see that in 40K to a certain extent, and there is a natural churn and a natural creep that's going to happen. But when every new army or every new warband or every new kill team is a little bit better than the last one, there's always going to be an incentive to buy more. It's just the way it is. Um, and that's really unfortunate for many regards. So we did recently see an update in Warcry for the Flesh Eater Corps, and in that update, we got all the new rules for all the new models, and some of the old models got downgraded, so they're not as attractive anymore. Did GW do that to sell more? Maybe, maybe not. Like chances are that the downgrading, which was it? It was the standard ghouls and the one of the big guys. So I should know the names. Um, Maybe they were a little bit too powerful for what they were, and they needed to be taken down a peg or two. But yeah, there is always going to be progression. There's always going to be something new. There's always going to be some new hype. So if you do miss something, uh, don't sweat it. There's probably going to be something else coming up along the line. Um, if you miss cards or dice or something like that, that's fine. That's an aside. If you miss rules, that can be a problem. Without rules, you're not able to play the game. In that case, often they are going to be published online. A lot of the time, GW is aware of this and will eventually get around to reprinting that. It will take some time, but you will eventually get it. I think the Necromunda rulebook is a fine example. That kept going in and out of print and needed an update because it had gotten quite old, and it did, and that was good. But for a long time, we needed to rely on external sites, people, players who compiled the rules because we couldn't get them elsewhere. So that is a thing that happens. Similarly with models, enjoy models. There's beautiful ones to paint, but if you're in a situation where you feel like you need something for an army or warband, chances are, if you give it long enough, something else is going to come along the lines that will be more powerful, or that particular powerful piece will get downgraded. If you want something that's kind of characterful or cool, you also have the option of getting something 3D printed and going along with that. Obviously, that's not going to be legal to bring it to Warhammer World, but the number of competitions that Games Workshop are actually doing themselves is getting relatively low, and that's going to be less of an issue than it used to be. So yeah, that's it. Right now, Games Workshop do some weird things. Hopefully, me talking about it and making you aware of it will help you get the product that you want. Um, I do have a separate video where I talk about the hype cycle and some considerations before you buy. That's probably something that's worth looking at. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you very much for listening, and have a great day. Thanks for making it all the way to the end. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Each week, I put up a new video talking about one of Games Workshop's specialist games. The goal is always to try and make the best possible two-player experience. If this is something you'd find interesting, please subscribe to the channel and comment to let me know what you'd like to see in future.